Hello everyone, welcome to another video in the series of acid-base balance. Previously we have seen basic aspects of arterial sampling and arterial blood gas analysis. If you have not seen that video, the link is in the description below and you can watch it. Today in this video we will discuss about various causes and some basic things of metabolic acidosis. So before going to metabolic acidosis, we have to decide whether the disorder is metabolic or respiratory, and in that whether it is acidosis or alkalosis. So for that, let's quickly revise the normal value. We have to just keep in mind the average value. So average value of pH is 7.4. Average value of bicarbonate is 24 milliequivalents per liter, and average value of PCO2 is 40 millimeters of mercury. Now, whenever we get ABG report in our hands, first we have to check the pH of arterial blood. So if pH is less than 7.4 or more than 7.4, then it is very straightforward. Less than 7.4 pH is considered acidosis and more than 7.4 pH is considered alkalosis. But if pH is 7.4, so this doesn't rule out acid-base disorder. We have to see other parameters. So now coming to acidosis side, if pH is less than 7.4 or even if pH is 7.4, then we have to see bicarbonate and PCO2 levels. If bicarbonate levels are less than 24 milliequivalents per liter, then we can say that the patient is in metabolic acidosis. If PCO2 levels are more than 40 millimeters of mercury, then the patient is in respiratory acidosis. Coming to alkalosis side, when pH is more than 7.4 or 7.4, if bicarbonate levels are more than 24, then the patient is said to be in metabolic alkalosis. And when PCO2 levels are less than 40, then patient is said to be in respiratory alkalosis. Now our body will try to compensate change in pH. So what will be the compensation here? In case of metabolic acidosis, body will try to compensate by decreasing PCO2 by hyperventilating. In cases of respiratory acidosis, body will try to increase bicarbonate levels in body by preserving more bicarbonate from kidney. In cases of metabolic alkalosis, body will try to retain more PCO2 by hypoventilation. And in cases of respiratory alkalosis, body will try to excrete bicarbonate levels in urine. So body will try to decrease the bicarbonate levels in body. Now, these are two statements. Metabolic defects can coexist and respiratory defects can coexist. Now, the first statement, metabolic defects can coexist, that is a true statement. As we all know, the patient can present with both diarrhea and vomiting. So, vomiting will lead to metabolic alkalosis and diarrhea will lead to metabolic acidosis. So, metabolic alkalosis plus acidosis can both be seen at the same time in the patient. But second statement that respiratory defects can coexist at the same time is false, because respiratory acidosis is by hypoventilation and respiratory alkalosis is by hyperventilation. So the patient cannot be hyperventilating and hypoventilating at the same time. So this thing we have to keep in mind. Another thing is that metabolic defects and respiratory defects can occur simultaneously. Like patient can be in metabolic acidosis and respiratory acidosis also. That depends on the clinical features and presenting symptoms of patient. Now coming to our main topic of this video, that is metabolic acidosis. So as we saw, metabolic acidosis is because of decrease in bicarbonate concentration in body. So body will try to reduce PCO2 by hyperventilation. Now, how will we know that whether the body has compensated for this acidosis or not? So we calculate expected PCO2 concentration by this formula called Winter's formula. So what is Winter's formula? Expected PCO2 concentration is equal to 1.5 into bicarbonate concentration plus 8, an error of plus minus 2. So if patient's PCO2 levels are between these limits, we can say that the patient is in compensated metabolic acidosis. If PCO2 is higher or lower than this limit, then we can say that patient is in uncompensated metabolic acidosis, or there can be another component of respiratory alkalosis or acidosis. Now, once we have made the diagnosis of metabolic acidosis clear, then what will be our next step? Our next step will be to calculate anion gap. Now, what is anion gap? Anion gap is serum sodium minus serum chloride plus bicarbonate. So basically anion gap will be sodium minus chloride minus bicarbonate. And what is the normal value of this anion gap? Normal value is 10 plus minus 2, that is 8 to 12. So this is normal value. Now why this anion gap occurs in our body? So this is the compartment of cations in our body and this is the compartment of anions. So majority of the cations are sodium and potassium, but potassium is very less compared to sodium. Normal sodium is 140 and normal potassium is 3 to 4. So we ignore potassium in calculation of anion gap. We only take sodium as main cation, and for anions, the major component is formed by chloride and bicarbonate. So this compartment is unmeasured cations and this compartment is unmeasured anions. So the gap we can see here, this much. This gap is called as anion gap, and this much anion gap is common in each and every individual. So now there is another concept of corrected anion gap. What is corrected anion gap? As we all know, every cation in the body is bound to albumin. So the patient's albumin level will affect patient's free cations, and so it will indirectly affect patient's anion gap. So corrected anion gap is calculated anion gap plus 2.5 into 4.5 minus patient's albumin. So if we see here, if patient's albumin is reduced, so the anion gap will calculated here may be normal, but there may be increase in unmeasured cation because of low levels of albumin. So let's say that patient's albumin is 2.5. So then here our calculated, suppose our calculated anion gap is 10 plus 2.5 into 2. So then the anion gap will be 15. So then this will be a case of high anion gap metabolic acidosis. So by this way, patient's albumin level can alter anion gap. So now, after confirming the diagnosis of metabolic acidosis, then we calculated anion gap. Then after calculation of anion gap, now we know that whether the patient is in high anion gap metabolic acidosis or normal anion gap metabolic acidosis. So first we will see high anion gap metabolic acidosis, as it is relatively simple. So we all know this mnemonic of high anion gap metabolic acidosis causes, that is mud piles, or also Kussmaul is another mnemonic we can use. So what is mud piles? M is methanol and E is ethanol intoxication. So methanol and ethanol both are unmeasured anions. Then U is uremia. So patient of CKD. This will be given in the history. Then D say diabetic ketoacidosis. So patient of type 1 diabetes mellitus. Then P say propylene glycol and ethylene glycol. I say the patient can be in infection, or there may be some inborn error of metabolism, or there may be drug treatment like isoniazid. Also lactic acidosis, it can be drug induced or it can be because of hypoxia. And as say finally salicylate poisoning. So these are the causes of high anion gap metabolic acidosis. Each and every one of these causes increase in unmeasured anion resulting in high anion gap. So, okay, now these are our differential diagnosis. So we can say that the patient is in high anion gap metabolic acidosis, and based on the history of intoxication or CKD or type 1 diabetes mellitus, we can also diagnose the condition. But many of times the diagnosis is not straightforward as this. The patient may concurrently have other acid-base disorder. So our next step will be to calculate delta ratio. Now what is this delta ratio? Delta ratio is basically ratio of difference in anion gap and difference in bicarbonate. One thing we have to note here, that this is the ratio of differences. That is why it is known as delta ratio, right? So if we take normal anion gap as 10, and bicarbonate is 24, and in our patient, let's take anion gap as 20 and bicarbonate as 40. So we have to take difference between these two values, not the absolute value of anion gap or bicarbonate. So if we calculate delta ratio in this patient, it will come out as 1 because both in numerator and denominator the difference is 10. So if delta ratio is between 1 to 2, the patient is said to be in Hagma only. But what if delta ratio is less than 1 or more than 2? So when delta ratio is less than 1, then uh, when delta ratio is less than 1, then difference in bicarbonate is more than when compared to difference in anion gap. So there is some other mechanism working in the body which causes more drop in bicarbonate because we are taking net difference in this delta ratio. So other mechanism will cause more drop in bicarbonate compared to rise in anion gap. So the patient is said to be in high anion gap plus normal anion gap metabolic acidosis. High anion gap will increase anion gap and also decrease bicarbonate level. On the other hand, normal anion gap will decrease bicarbonate level without increasing anion gap. So ultimately the difference between bicarbonate levels will be more. So our delta ratio will be less than 1. Now when will delta ratio will be more than 2? So if we take here for delta ratio to be more than 2, the rise in anion gap should be more than fall in bicarbonate levels, right? So there is some mechanism working in the body which is preventing bicarbonate to fall as expected. So in this case, we will say that the patient is in high anion gap metabolic acidosis plus metabolic alkalosis. So high anion gap metabolic acidosis, the anion gap will be increased and bicarbonate levels will be decreased. But because of metabolic alkalosis, the bicarbonate levels will increase. So ultimately, there will be less difference between bicarbonate levels. So the delta ratio will be more than 2. And as we saw earlier, metabolic disorders like acidosis and alkalosis, they can both occur simultaneously, which is not possible in respiratory disorders. Now coming back to metabolic acidosis, we diagnosed metabolic acidosis. We calculated anion gap, but anion gap in our patient is normal. Then we made a diagnosis of normal anion gap metabolic acidosis. Now, before going to the causes of normal anion gap metabolic acidosis, we will take the next step in algorithm, that is urinary anion gap. After calculating the urinary anion gap, we will see causes of normal anion gap metabolic acidosis. Now, what is urinary anion gap? Urinary anion gap is urine sodium plus urinary potassium minus urinary chloride. So if we draw a same diagram as we drew in anion gap, so let's take this as cations and let's take this as anions. This is urinary cation concentration and urinary anion concentration. So this is sodium and potassium. This is chloride. So this compartment, that is unmeasured cations, this is mainly formed by ammonium ion, that is NH4 plus. In this difference we see here, this is basically urinary anion gap. Now what is the importance of this ammonium ion? We know we acidify urine, and by that means we excrete H plus in urine. But do we excrete H plus as H plus in urine? No, we excrete acid eh, with combined to NH3. By forming NH4 plus ion, there is net secretion of acid in urine. So can we say that whenever we are excreting more acid in urine, there will be more concentration of NH4 plus ion in urine? Yes, and whenever we are excreting less acid in urine, there will be less concentration of NH4 plus ion in urine. Yes, okay, so after calculating urinary anion gap, there can be two possibilities. Either UAG can be positive or UAG can be negative. What do we mean by UAG positive? Urinary anion gap positive means this gap is more. What does this mean? The excretion of NH4 plus in urine is less. When excretion of acid in urine is less, by common sense, we can assume that urinary acid excretion will be more when body is in acidotic state. But this is contradicting here. So can we say that this is a problem of renal excretion of acid? So whenever we get urinary anion gap positive in cases of normal anion gap metabolic acidosis, we suspect the patient is having some renal cause of acidosis. And what do we mean by urinary anion gap negative? This difference is reverse. So whenever urinary anion gap is negative, NH4 plus compartment will take up more space in this bath. So can we say that there is more excretion of NH4 plus, uh, so that there is more excretion of acid in urine? The body is in acidotic state. There is more excretion of acid in urine. This makes sense, right? So the renal pathway of acid excretion is normal, but there is some other pathological mechanism working in the body which is causing increase in acids in our body. So we will say that the acidosis, normal anion gap metabolic acidosis, is because of genitourinary causes. In very simple way, how do we remember this? Negative urinary anion gap, the cause is GUT causes, not genitourinary, because renal also come under urinary system, but let's take it as GIT causes. So negative, there is problem in gut, right? So GIT causes. Now, what are the renal causes? There is some renal problem in patient. The patient is in acidotic state. If we put all this together, then we will get renal tubular acidosis. Right. Now we all know that renal tubular acidosis, mainly there are three types: RTA type 1, RTA type 2, and RTA type 4. We will see in detail about renal tubular acidosis in another video, but here very superficially, after making a diagnosis of RTA, we check potassium concentration. We all know that hyperkalemia is very pathognomonic of RTA type 4. In all other RTA, that is RTA type 1 and type 2, there is hypokalemia. So our differential in case of hypokalemia will be RTA type 1 and RTA type 2. Just for the sake of completing this flowchart here, two major differences between RTA type 1 and type 2 is urinary stones. It will be seen in RTA type 1, RTA type 2. It will be absent in RTA type 2. Why? Because RTA type 2 is proximal defect. Almost everything is excreted in RTA type 2. So citrulline will also be excreted in urine. So there will be hypercitrullinuria. As we all know that citrulline is protective against renal stone formation. So there will be no stone formation seen in RTA type 2. Meanwhile in RTA type 1, stone formation will be seen. And another thing is urinary pH. In RTA type 1, urinary pH will be more than 5.5. In RTA type 2, urinary pH will be less than 5.5. As we all know, RTA type 1 is distal tubular acidosis. So acidification of urine mainly occurs in distal tubules. So whenever patient is having RTA type 1, it will be more severe defect. So urinary pH will be more towards basic side. But in RTA type 2, the defect is not as severe as RTA type 1. So urinary pH will be slightly acidic side. Now coming to the GI causes. What are the GI causes? It's very simple. We can have diarrhea. As we all know that secretions of pancreas are very rich in bicarbonate ion. So whenever we are having diarrhea, we go into a state of metabolic acidosis. There can be enterocutaneous fistula. There can be pancreatic fistula. And there can be ureterosigmoidostomy. So these are the GIT causes of normal anion gap metabolic acidosis. When we put all these together, we get the causes of normal anion gap metabolic acidosis. So as a whole, we have seen metabolic acidosis. So this is our whole flowchart. To concise this, first we diagnose the metabolic acidosis. We decide whether it is compensated or non-compensated by Winter's formula by calculating expected PCO2. After that, we calculate anion gap. On the basis of anion gap, we diagnose whether the patient is in high anion gap metabolic acidosis or normal anion gap metabolic acidosis. If patient is in HAGMA, then our next step will be to calculate delta ratio. If patient is in NAGMA, that is normal anion gap metabolic acidosis, our next step will be to calculate urinary anion gap. Okay, so in our subsequent videos, we will also see about metabolic alkalosis, respiratory acidosis, and alkalosis, and some basic exercise which can be asked in examinations to where we are asked to diagnose whether the patient is in mixed acid-base disorder or metabolic acid-base HAGMA, NAGMA, everything like that. So we will discuss that in subsequent lectures. Thank you so much.